In a lot of my recent content, I've been focusing on how the functions of judgment can derail the work of NI, and I've been emphasizing that NI takes care of itself. In a sense, NI, when it's in the position of dominance, and only when it's in a position of a dominant function, has an automatic quality to it. Not automatic in a mechanical sense, it's not sequentially automatic, but more so in an oceanic sense. It has highs and lows, high tides, low tides, phases of calm and quiescence, phases where there's more activity, currents, tidal waves. It has its own motion, it has its own movement. And from this perspective, it is true that the functions of judgment, which are not oceanic, but much more sequential and jagged, can interrupt that flow. And that can be an issue for NI dominance, not just in terms of individuation and self-exploration, self-development, but really also on the basis of everyday well-being and in the ways in which well-being can be affected by anxiety and stress. So too much intervention on the side of the functions of judgment can certainly be a stressor for the NI dominant, and it happens a lot, and I've talked about this a lot in my recent work. But I do believe that there's also a way in which the derailing can be, at some level, the work of principally NI and not the work of the function of judgment. In the current incarnation of the NI self, I cannot really speak for earlier epochs. I can only make inductive conjectures. We can know about earlier epochs and we can assume many things about how NI dominants perceived themselves at the time. Of course, they were not aware they were NI dominants, but they still perceived themselves in certain fashion. Obviously, the higher amount of information we have is about our own epoch, and I think we can say that in our day and age, the NI dominants, well, first of all, there are more dominants than ever who are aware that they are NI dominants. Still by no means the majority of the population, but a now not insignificant portion of the population of NI dominants is self-aware about being NI dominant. Whether it be those people who are self-aware, and probably I would say those people who are not aware, there is so much emphasis on the sense of sight. We talk about NI dominance as seeing ahead into the future, as seeing through people, seeing through their outwards external discourse and into their deeper motivations. We talk about NI dominance as having a particular vision over the long term. There's a very strong correlation, very strong etymological link between vision and sight, of course. And you can actually find many instances of that. Instances of how the metaphorical and terminological repertory at the disposal of the NI dominance to describe his or her own experience is really thematically dominated, as far as the senses are concerned, by the sense of sight. And this is the issue. This is the issue because what derails NI, that is not a function of the intervention of judgments, but really a function of how NI itself sees itself, is obviously going to be in its relationship with SE, because SE is what contributes to NI expansion. It's what gathers information for NI to enrich its own stock of images and metaphors, to process and lead to new insights. But SE gathers information through the senses, of course. SE itself is not the senses, but it's called sensation for a reason. It is deeply connected to the senses. And when I say that it's connected to the senses, I'm not saying it's connected to the sense. I'm using senses of the plural because we have, as far as we know, 5 senses, not just one. In other words, we have 4 senses that are not just sight. We have taste, touch, smell, and hearing. And yet we never talk about how the NI dominant hears things in a certain fashion, or touches things in a certain fashion, tastes them in a certain fashion, or smells things in a different fashion. It almost sounds dirty to some people. And this is really the heritage of Plato, you know. Plato massively privileged the sense of sight, and we are still influenced by that. There are NI dominants who talk about tasting and touching and smelling. And often these anti-dominants are the ones about whom you can probably say they are somewhere on the path of individuation, of spiritualization. Not necessarily far into it, they may still have a lot of issues to wrestle with, to reckon with, but there's something they've understood, is that NI is not just about sight. It's not even necessarily primordially about sight, it's about all the senses. It's about all the ways in which the world is encountered. If you put too much of a dominance, if you give sight too much of a dominance in how you perceive your own world, you can bet on the fact that you will tend to deprioritize the other senses when you're actually in touch with the world. And you will only make your alienation worse. In other words, you will make your alienation more like severance, right? Rather than like spiritualization. So I want to leave you with these thoughts. Is it not true that one of the ways in which we don't engage SE enough is that we put all of our focus into sight, and we lose the focus on all these other senses that are there standing to give us not just information, but the pure pleasure of sensory experience, reveling in it. We tend to see that as dirty. Sight as pure, but the other senses as dirty. Is that not one of the reasons why we feel so estranged from our SE a lot of the time? Don't forget, guys, that I have written another book on the INFJ, in fact a more recent one, called The Infinite Soul, INFJ Life in the Modern World. I talk about these issues and many other ones, and essentially this book is about how the INFJ can be happy, leading a life of purpose, meaning and value in this world right here, despite this world often seeming hostile to INFJs. It's helped a lot of people. Check the reviews as well as for the other book. The first link below is to The Infinite Soul. And as usual, guys, don't forget that I have a Patreon page. I've written other books, but I won't mention them here. And my Patreon is the lifeblood of my channel. If you would like to consider supporting me, I will be immensely grateful, because I could not do it without you, to continue producing quality content for you guys. So the link to my Patreon page is below, and don't forget, you get some really cool perks with it too. Like, you can interact with me on pretty much on a daily basis on our Discord server, for example, the Fullfold, and it's a great server. It's one of the perks of becoming a Patreon supporter, so consider it. The price for membership is not expensive, and you also get access to bonus videos every 2-3 weeks on a topic of your choosing. You can share what you'd like me to discuss on Discord, for example. So cool perks, and others too. Please consider it. Hopefully see you there. In the meantime, have a nice day, and see you next time, guys. Bye-bye.